Welcome. I'm Amanda McMillan. This is my partner, Samuel Ciochon.
Samuel Ciochon.
Chicago Home Partner, Division of At Properties. Thanks so much for joining us today. Truth is, life has been, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Insane.
I was going to go for hectic, but I guess we could use insane. That'll work.
It's insane.
Hectic. It's been hectic in personal life. It's been hectic in business life. And it sure as heck has been hectic in real estate.
Yep.
So Samuel and I came up with this idea, right? We are getting bombarded by our clients left and right. We are at another point where the market is, as I like to say, breathing a little bit differently, taking a little bit of a turn. And in that, we are getting questions and questions and questions from prospective clients. So we came up with this idea that we were going to meet monthly. We were going to dive in. We were going to kind of take some of these really hard questions. Some of them are really easy, so we appreciate those. Thank you so much. But we were going to take on some of these really tough questions and try and give our perspective. Right? Is that
Yeah.
Now,
we have a lot of perspectives.
Couple of disclosures, because there's always people out there that want to take what we say and twist it and change it and make it something different. First and foremost, we are experts in Chicago real estate. We are not talking about Chicagoland. We are not talking about the suburbs. We are not talking about Michigan or New York or Kentucky or California. We know amazing people in all of those areas. If you need recommendations, we do not know them. We are talking about Chicago real estate. We are talking about downtown. We are talking about the urban neighborhoods. We are experts in that. So if you want to come in and say, hey, that's
different
what you're saying
market.
is different in my market, 100%, we absolutely agree, and we're not trying to pitch that at all.
Yeah.
Disclosure number 2, even within our markets, we're going to say something that may apply to an urban neighborhood that doesn't apply to downtown. We may say something that applies to a single family home that doesn't apply to a 1-bedroom condo in a high rise. Real estate is local. And so we just want to make sure that everybody that's tuning in remembers that from that perspective. Fair?
Fair. Yeah.
Now, the one thing we also have to touch on before we get in is the media. The media, and we're going to touch a little bit more on it as we get in. The media is confusing. The media has a different job, and where they don't always align with what we try and do, right? We try and put the information and the data out there. Our job is not to capture and captivate interest. That's their job. They have to do that. And we'll discuss it a little bit later on, kind of what they need to do that. But a lot of the confusion that our clients are feeling right now are based on a starting point.
Headlines.
A headline, a conversation from the media. So we just want to be really, really transparent and really clear on that. We'll come back and talk about that a little bit all in all. Did I forget any of our disclosures?
Yes, you did. You got through 1 out of 3.
Oh, what else do we need to disclose?
Second one is we're trying not to create a false narrative and false confidence within our markets. That is not our goal. Obviously, we want to be as insightful as possible. So real estate is an asset. We want to make sure that our consumers know what's going on so everyone can make their own decisions.
Awesome. I mean, so well put. You know, I think that so many people, as we come out and we talk about the data and the truth, they look at us and they say, "Oh, you're spinning it. You're trying to make people buy and sell."
No.
We've gotten to where we've got because we were honest about what was happening. There are people that we have absolutely 100% said,
"Don't buy now.
This is
Don't
not the market for you.
Don't sell." Yeah,
don't buy, don't sell. This is not the market for you. We are not here to convince people to buy and sell in this market. We are here to help people understand what the heck is happening out there so then we can strategize what, when, and where makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Okay, what other disclosure did I forget?
All right, we are here to sort through a lot of the data and try to make sense to others what the data trends tell us.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm in. But I think the important thing on that is, right, where we consider ourselves local experts, we're local experts because we study really smart people, right? We study economists and experts that all they do is lock themselves in a room all day long, and all they do is study the data. We're smart enough to follow smart people. We're smart enough to absorb that information and put it out there. But 9 times out of 10, this is coming from different sources. we're just packaging up and trying to find a way to deliver it to our clients.
And I'm an economics major, studied that real estate economics in college, so I love the data.
Everyone knows I love the data. In fact,
You
Samuel has put me on
you
a
love
short
data
leash.
way too much, even more than I do, and it's insane.
Samuel has put me on a short leash. I'm going to keep my data verbiage to a minimum in this.
Yeah, the goal is to have fun with this as well. Like we want to be as informative, have fun. We don't want to be over inundating with too much data.
Awesome.
Because then people glaze over. We talk about this on every single appointment we go on. It's like, we love what we do. Most people glaze over.
Most people glaze
But we have to have that conversation a little
It sometimes happens when I'm talking to Samuel as well. All of a sudden I start going,
Yeah. I think that's the blonde. Even though I'm brunette. Shit.
okay, let's get started. We've got some questions that we've already got coming in, which on that note, we will be, since we are doing this monthly, we are going to encourage more and more people to send us questions, send us your specific stuff. We'd love to be able to highlight it and talk about it. Here's some of the questions that we've kind of acquired from some of our clients, and so hopefully it's going to hit on some of the things that you guys are thinking about too.
Totally.
Okay,
Ready?
let's start big. We're going big. Ready? Ready? I'm teeing you up, Samuel.
Okay, let's do it.
Are we in Chicago on the brink of a housing crisis?
Well, technically no. So it's going to feel a little bit different, but on an economic scale, we're not in a housing crisis. It's going to be really, really difficult to actually say that a housing crisis is going to come in. The reason is we haven't seen, like other markets, AR prices skyrocket. We're a very, very, very stable market. The way that I like to always talk to my clients is, if there's 11 industries out there in all of like the financial districts, we have a majority of them. It's not like we're just strictly tech, we're not strictly finance, we're not strictly anything else. Our market is very diverse, which is really nice, because it actually allows us to, if one sector falls a little bit, the other ones make up for it. And so we've always been really, really steady, I feel like.
For certain. I always call us, Chicago is the little engine that could, right? We chug along, we kind of ramp it up, we don't see the peaks and valleys. I think that the other important thing to note is that, right, I'm going to look at the data. We went through the housing crisis.
Yes.
We came out a lot smarter, right? And because of that, we have data to help us better understand, project, forecast where we're at in the marketplace. Some of the things that we saw that were actually linked to the crisis are data points that right as we're going through this transition, we're going right back to those data points to saying, hey, where are we at? First and foremost, equity is at a high right now. People have so much high. I promised not too many statistics, but the one that I have to share because it blows my mind. 63% of people that own homes in the US, their primary residences have at least 50% equity.
Yeah.
That's an astronomical number. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
So we have people that have a lot of equity. Those people are
But also during like the pandemic, we saw a lot of people putting more cash down. Like we've had these conversations a lot.
For certain.
Is
Bigger
like
down payments.
My first-time home buyers, like through the mid to 2010s, were putting 5% down. A majority of my clients were putting 20 to 30% down.
Because they weren't spending money.
For the pandemic. So they put that money down, which is automatic equity built in. And then we've seen some price appreciation over the last 2 years, which actually helps with that too. So
the other thing kind of on that whole mortgage route that we've seen, subprime lending is almost non-existent, right? Subprime lending was a key ingredient of what toppled our market before, and that is almost non-existent right now. On top of that, what we consider risky loan products. Risky loan products would be shorter terms, a 5-year ARM, 7-year ARM, something like that. But very, very few people did ARM products because the 30-year fixed was so attractive, right? So what we saw was that we have a lot of really stable mortgage products out there, and the final ingredient, we still don't have any inventory. So we have great equity. We have very few subprime and risky loan products, and we have very little inventory. I can't predict the future. I can't tell you whether or not we technically are going to crash in this marketplace, but I can tell you all of the data tells us right now that is very unlikely.
Are we talking what is a housing recession? And are we in one?
That's what I've got up next.
All right. Yep. Somebody submitted that question.
What is a housing recession? I think if you asked most people, they would have no idea.
Well, okay, so like let's go back just a little bit context-wise, right? So
Sure.
like this year is the first year we're seeing housing recession in the headlines. And
It's
I
a
think
new
that's-
buzzword.
It's a buzzword, yeah. So that's like where people are coming up with this because literally, I mean, you watch CNBC every day and it comes
It's
up
a housing
every
recession.
day.
But once again, if you ask those reporters that are talking about the housing recession, what actually constitutes a housing recession, I'd be willing to put a large wager on the fact that half of them don't even know the characteristics that are. Now, Lawrence Yun, who's the chief economist for NAR, National Association of Realtors, he finally came on record because I think he saw a little bit of a mockery being made about this buzzword, and said, "Okay, I'm going to put a definition to it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure I don't muck
Don't
this one up.
butcher it, don't
I'm not going to
butcher
butcher it." He basically said, to be in a housing recession, we have to have fewer home sales, okay, lower housing starts, new construction starts, a decline in mortgage lending, and this was a very strong word choice, a collapse in mortgage refinance. Okay, now let's talk about that. First of all, a collapse in mortgage refinance. Absolutely. Anybody that was going to refi did so
did.
when the interest
Yeah,
rates
yeah,
were
yeah.
between 3 and 4%. So that whole market went away because
Yeah.
a lot of people refied already. So we expect that very strongly word choice collapse. Okay, decline in mortgage lending. Yes, we're selling less homes. We're selling less homes because we were selling a lot of homes over the last few years.
Yeah.
So that is not scary. It's not anything we didn't predict. It's not anything that we didn't say was going to happen. So to me, I see that
Just fewer people are moving.
lower housing starts, right?
Yeah.
We have a war going on overseas. We have labor shortages. We have supply chain issues. Of course there's lower housing starts. We've got lower housing starts, we've got lower inventory, we've got fewer home sales, and we've got a decline in people getting mortgages. Like,
Yeah.
none of that is unexpected. None of that is scary. That's what we expect to happen in our market when you go from a very hot market to the market balancing.
But I mean, like if you talk about like housing starts, we haven't really had a ton of new construction anyway in the last couple of years. I mean,
Construction was down huge in 2021.
Yeah.
And even more so now.
And I mean, like even downtown, like we're not seeing a bunch of luxury condo buildings that they were building back in the 2010s. We're seeing that
They're building a lot of rental
rentals,
buildings,
yeah,
right?
we're seeing
For
a lot
certain.
of rentals. So if you look at like that, it's obviously
Yeah. No, I
impacting
mean,
our inventory as well.
it's one of those things that, per that definition, are we in a housing recession? I would say absolutely. But I also don't think it necessarily has the negative connotation that people associate with it.
Totally.
It's that it's a little
It's
bit of
a-
a normalizing, and you could say that about any of the markets, right? People
Well,
tend to see it negatively
yeah.
because it's not as profitable to somebody and it's not as positive for somebody's specific instance.
Yeah.
But we saw this, right? Back in the housing crisis, we didn't have a market correction before 2008, right?
No, we did not.
We didn't
It
have
was
a
like
market
literally
correction
do-do-do-do-do-do,
between September 11th and then we had a crash. So these are the things that normalize our market, that keep our people in healthy situations.
Yeah.
It's
Literally what we've been asking for the last 2 years is like literally for a somewhat of a slowdown, a normalization. I mean, like even talking
the
about
market to breathe differently.
just like in general, most people have been asking for this to be a little bit slower, to be a
Let's
little bit more
change it
normalized.
up.
So then this is what's happening, and that's what's coming up with interest rates. That's like why all these things are coming into place. And yes, I mean, it's gonna feel a little slower, which is what a recession is.
Let's keep going here. What do we have next? Oh, this is always a hot topic. Interest rates. What the heck is happening with interest rates? Where have they been? Where are they going? What's happened? Why is this such a big topic this year?
Well, so it's really been a topic for the last 2 years. I mean, like I would really say it started back in the pandemic. So the reason why they keep interest rates low is essentially to stimulate the economy. They need interest rates low. it's easier for people to borrow. It's easier for people to borrow for housing, for companies, for leveraging everything to maintain that. And so with that, we had really low interest rates, 3%, under 3%.
You mean a 3% interest rate isn't
under
normal?
3%. Yeah. It's
I
not
think that
normal.
should be the new norm.
It's
I think
not.
it should also
I mean,
be 75 degrees on Thanksgiving, but I'm not going to get away with that, am I?
Yeah, everyone loves like low interest rates, but ultimately what we've statistically seen is that between 4 to 6, probably even a little bit higher, probably between like 5 and 6% is a normal interest rate. That's like where we were in the 2000s. It's where we are, like we've kind of hit it a little bit once in a while in the 2010s.
You're younger than I am.
Yeah. No, I mean like
we bought our first house at
7.5%,
and we thought it was great.
And that's really why everyone went through that buying frenzy the last 2 years. Now what we're seeing is a correction. Is it an overcorrection? Yes, probably, but they need to control other things. And one of those is inflation, and housing is 33% of the house, like of inflation.
Has a
like,
huge economic
crazy.
footprint.
So it does. And so that's what they need to bring some pricing down and normalize some of the other markets, and it's going to have a little bit of effect on us, but ultimately a 6% interest rate is still decent. Rent's going up. So like rents are going up 12%, interest rates are going up. I mean, you're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Milk is expensive.
Yeah. Oh my God. I went to the
groceries
store,
are
eggs
expensive.
were like $3. I was like, and that's not even at Whole Foods. That's the difference.
No, so many great points in there. Like I think first and foremost, we got really comfortable with a 3% interest rate, and people forgot the fact that 3% interest rates, it's not normal. It's not healthy. It was to combat a major world pandemic and complete social and civil unrest. Like our country was screwed up.
And the election year. So,
right?
and election years always have the lowest interest rate, like it is, because they need to make sure the change isn't too drastic.
Now, what I would say is if we're gonna point some blame and kind of say, hey, something should have been done better, realistically, the change of the interest rate should have started earlier in 2021. Hands down, I absolutely agree with that. You know, that if they could have started that and more gradually done it, it had a really negative impact on people in general, all right? Their mindsets, their pressures, just their way of reacting. Like we saw a lot of crazy happen this year.
It probably should have happened in 2016. It probably should have happened in 2018.
Right.
And then yes, we could have cut back in 2020. I mean, all is hindsight. I mean,
totally. It's easy to say from the passenger seat.
And
we're not making those decisions.
They made those decisions for other reasons. And we did. I mean, like back in 2018, 2019, we went up again to 4%, 5%.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that. Did it affect our market? Not really. I mean, we had a little bit of a slowdown in that time frame, but prices still came back once we normalized to it. And that's what this is. It's literally the Fed saying it's breaking so that we kind of get out of this trajectory, so we can get on
tailspin.
So we can get on a normal thing. I mean, it's insane, but
for certain,
people are still always going to need to move, and at that point, you got to make that decision on your own individual basis. Is if this interest rate is good, then still purchase. If it makes more sense to rent, then rent at that time. But again, that's an individual person's thing. So that's the conversations that we have to have on that individual basis.
Well, I think just the point in remembering, and just to kind of summarize it, is that we're at a pretty healthy interest rate right now. It feels negative to those that have been looking and, had a different rate enticed in front of them, but we're at a pretty healthy interest rate right now. In fact, we're still at numbers that are some of the lowest numbers we've recorded in the last 5 decades.
Yep.
So when we kind of put it back contextually and kind of look at it from that perspective, then it's easy to say, okay, you know what? It is what it is, and it's not a bad thing. And when we always have to remember that these shifts, changes, all of these things stabilize our market, and stability is the one thing that we're craving in all of this. We get fired up by what are seemingly boring things to some people. Inventory.
You clearly get fired up if milk goes down. So, I mean, there's...
Inventory has been a huge buzzword for us over the last few years, right?
Yes.
Huge. It's inventory, inventory, inventory. Where is it? Why don't we have any? All of this stuff.
I mean,
what do we think is happening now in Chicago?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I got in real estate in 2009. It was a buzzword back then. The difference is it swung completely opposite. Back then it was, hey, we have 36 months of inventory. Now we're at 1.7 to like 3%. And it really just depends on the neighborhood that we're in. But what this means is that the rate that buyers are purchasing, this is how long it's taking to sell through those properties. And it does vary on a monthly basis. Like, we've gone up, we've gone down, and we typically see it go up during seasonality.
Sure.
We're seeing that this year, probably a little bit more than what we were expecting. But last year, we had the opposite issue in the pandemic, which set our spring market a little bit crazier, was we went into, normally during the seasonal months, we have 5 months of inventory. That's been normal for the last 6 years. Now what we're seeing is 3% going into it. So we're half of the rate that we normally have been, and now.
Well, and I think that brings up a great point. So, right, inventory has been, or let me rephrase that, lack of inventory has been something that has been an issue that we have been dealing with throughout COVID. Different on different markets, right? Downtown saw a little bit of an excess in 2020, then it saw a little, so we've seen a little bit that. The urban neighborhoods have been performing a little bit differently, but as a vast generalization, which I'm gonna get bastardized for saying.
On Chicago downtown, like city of Chicago.
Inventory has been a little bit non-existent. We came into 2022, right? The COVID conversation was at a better perspective, right? We kind of went from a, hey, we're gonna beat COVID, rah rah, to, hey, we're gonna normalize it. We're gonna learn how to live with it. So the COVID conversation started to die down. The life started to kind of change a little bit, move a little bit differently. We looked to 2022 saying, I'm not expecting a lot of inventory, but we're expecting more. We're expecting some more inventory to trickle
on the back end of the year.
Yes,
that's what
exactly.
we predicted in November when we did our like market overview.
Exactly. At the end of 2021, we said we're going to expect to see a little bit of inventory, and boy, were we wrong in that. Now, to be fair, we did not forecast a war overseas.
No, I mean
and we did not forecast what the Fed was going to do with interest rates. Those were our two major screw-ups in what we were advising and seeing and stuff like that. So those two things, what we saw happen, right? We've talked about it before. We had labor shortages, we had supply chain issues. Our inventory in most of our neighborhoods actually went down from 2021 to 2022 between 15 to 25%.
Yeah.
We had none. We went down more.
Further.
And then we made people crazy about interest rates. That's essentially what we saw. Now that we're finally starting to scratch the surface and get a little bit more, now it's like, oh my God, inventory is great. We are still so far below where we need it to be healthy that you and I both know, we talk about it all the time. We sit in our Monday morning meetings and say, gosh, this client's waiting for more stuff to come on. This client's waiting for more stuff to come on.
Literally every single one of ours
are just waiting for more inventory. So we are still absolutely at a point where we're eking more out finally, but we're starting from a really, really low number from that perspective.
Well, and then also like what we're kind of seeing with interest rates, people are moving less because that's going to be the other thing. And so, I mean, like what we had initially in 2020 was people didn't want to have people in their houses, and COVID was that thing. Now it's, all right, if we're moving up, are we not? Like, what's going on?
There are a lot of people right now that have mortgages with interest rates under 4%. Those people are now trying to think through whether or not, it's actually slowing down some of those people to sell that home. Not because they're not ready to sell that home, but they're not wanting to get out of that mortgage. That's become a comfortability for them. So we're going to see that aspect as well as we kind of turn this corner, is that we're going to get people that are, I don't want to say stuck, but they're resistant to give up what feels like a really good thing. The fact of the matter is, right, even if you go into everything that we've been talking about, like for the last few years, we've been so hammered about the equity, the inventory, the interest rates, the financials behind what we're doing. But we sell residential real estate.
Yeah.
We sell homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have some investment homes in there, but for the most part, we sell homes. And people buy and sell homes for reasons that are far greater than the financial aspect of it. So right now, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna hammer on what's happening and what's this and what's next. But you know what? Life happens. Life constitutes needs for changes in there. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I've actually seen a lot with my clientele and my, kind of seeing this like fixation on parts of the process that aren't necessarily the most important drivers. We talk a lot with
Yeah.
our clients about priorities. Why are you buying? Why are you selling? What next chapter are you getting to? So all of this, I'm not saying it's not important, but I also think that sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia of it.
Yeah, backpedal and remind ourselves what is actually going on.
I overpaid for my house 16 years ago. You know what? And then let's see, we bought it in 2006 and we overpaid for it. In 2009, it was worth 70% of what we paid for it. In 2022, it's probably worth 225% of what we paid for it. None of that matters to the time that I've had in that house. And sometimes we get really, really caught up and we get really taken away from the fact that I've got a home that with my husband and my kids, we've created a life in it.
So many memories.
And memories and everything else.
Hopefully.
Okay, I'm reining this ship in. We're out of control now. Oh, here's a good one. This is always a soapbox issue for me. The news has a lot of negativity in it lately, especially surrounding real estate. What should people believe? I'll run with this. This is a big topic for me.
I was like, this is your soapbox.
This is my soapbox.
This is you.
I kind of touched on it before. Media has a job to do, just like we do.
I think it even goes outside of real estate. Like media just in general is just, it's what we were talking about a couple days ago. It's fear or excitement. Like that's what sells newspapers. That's what sells clickbait. That's what sells everything.
Media's job is to engage consumers.
Mm-hmm.
There are the two emotions that engage consumers. You're either going to make them scared or you're going to make them excited, and then they're going to engage. Nothing else, right? If you read a headline and you're like, oh, you're probably not going to read the article, but if you read the headline and go, holy crap, the likelihood is that you're going to read it.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that I've done over the years that I always laugh in is that it happens all the time. I'm sure it happens to you too, is that somebody will send me an email or send me a text or call me up and go, oh my God, did you see the cover of Crain Chicago Business today? Did you read that article?
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, I did. Did you? They'd say, well, no, but I saw it. I'd say, well, go read that and come back to me and let's have a conversation about it. Headlines have to cause certain emotions. The media needs to engage, and they do it very well. And it's not like it's a malicious thing, so I don't mean to talk about it like that. There's just sometimes, in the way that consumers digest media, there can be some miseducation. If you actually read the whole article, watch the whole podcast, do from start to stop, the truth tends to come out as you siphon through it. So we've had a hard time as the media has gone in and said, the sky is falling. Because you know what? 3 months ago, it was like the hottest real estate market ever.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it's been a rampant ride. We know what they're doing. We're not trying to say that they're not doing a great job, but it is one of those things that we really have to be present about. And we've talked a lot about this next chapter, right? They've kind of shifted gears. They're now looking to talk a little bit more about the negativity, the housing recession, all of this doom and gloom. One of the things that we've talked a lot about, you and I, is, right? We just talked about the fact that some of our clients strategically paid premiums for homes because they were competing against 5 to 10 to 15 other people in offers. And that strategy made sense for them. And so what we look at is we look at those prices and we kind of, I use the rationale just because the numbers are easy. But let's use a price point of $500,000. A client's going to buy a $500,000 condo.
Yeah.
Right? We tell them that it's probably worth somewhere between $490,000 to $510,000. That's the actual valuation based on our market analysis. But then we might say to them, in a competitive situation, this home may sell for $525,000. So you take that $500,000 to $510,000, right? In a market like this, it's either going to send at the very high end of its range, that $510,000 number we gave them, if not above that. And
Yep.
that's where people had to be competitive from that perspective.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that condo is all of a sudden worth more, right? Somebody paid a premium price for it because of the circumstances. So that same condo comes on today and, well, maybe only 2 people are competing for it, or maybe 1 person. Maybe that same $500,000 condo all of a sudden sells for $500,000, 5% less than maybe it sold for 6 months ago. Does that mean that the sky is falling, the market is declining, and prices are decreasing? Or does that mean that the value of the condo has pretty much been the same throughout, but
Yeah.
somebody made a strategic decision during that
During that
time
moment.
to help their own personal situation thrive? The media is going to tell, we know what the media is going to tell us. The media is going to tell us the market's down 5%. The media is going to tell us that the prices are falling because that's what they have to do. And they're not wrong, right? There's a lot of places in the country that absolutely, we believe, not being experts, right? This is pure hearsay. There's parts of the country that, in my opinion, should see absolute corrections. We're coming from a pretty stable marketplace, and so the idea of a correction outside of the normal seasonality of what we see, I mean, let's remember that.
Well, we were reading that article the other day and about the pricing and what markets were going to do what, right? But it was the big scary headline, but then in it they dissected it and they were like, the markets that saw 40% appreciation, they may see price reductions. If you were like seeing 10% appreciation, you'll probably be fine. And then if you saw below, you're gonna be great. Like your market is not gonna fall at all.
Totally.
And we were talking about Chicago being that way. It's like, we didn't see a ton, like.
Let me ask I'm gonna throw another question in here to ask the question another way. A client comes to you and says, hey Samuel, my number one priority, I wanna buy a condo in, let's say, 2023. My number one priority is that I can get a reasonable price. Right off the bat, what quarters are you going to say typically have a lower pricing strategy?
I even do it for myself. I always say Q3, Q4. So, I mean, like, the thing is, Q1 is the spring market. That's where we see prices go up. And then we see a little bit of seasonality during the summer when people are traveling and doing their stuff and are distracted. We may get a little pop in that Q3, which is what we always talk about, depending on the year. But then Q4 is the best months to buy. Like, I love purchasing in the winter because literally you get better prices. You may not get a lot to choose from, but then at that point, what's your priority?
So now you've done this since 2009. How many years would you say that that's been on trend, that Q3 and Q4 have been softer in pricing?
Every single year. Yeah.
I've done this for 20 years, and the only year that I would say, and you would have been too fresh in the industry, the only year that I saw that Q3 was slightly higher would have been November 2029, or excuse me, whoa. The only year that I would have...
Oh, wow.
Predicting the future, people. The only year that I saw that Q3 was slightly elevated would have been 2009.
Yeah.
2009, because they had the government put into place
that buyer credit.
First-time home buyer credit to try and stimulate the market, and the market was so bad in Q1 and Q2 because this was the beginning of the crash that was the only time in 20 years we saw it. So
yeah, it was like the $7,500 credit, right?
So almost every year, I don't want to make exaggerations, so I don't want to say every year. Almost every year, we've seen that the prices naturally soften seasonality in Q3 and Q4.
Yeah, which is what we talk about sometimes with like even our upgrade buyers, right? So like if you're in a house, you may take a little bit of a loss on your sell, but you're buying a bigger house at a better rate as well. So that, I mean, like we've been beating this to a dead horse for the last, I don't know.
Okay, so the media, we think that they're very good at their jobs, but they think that sometimes the whole story, it's not that it's not told, but it's not...
The whole story is told.
The whole story is told. Most consumers don't digest it correctly.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, where are we going from here? We're getting into more tough stuff. What should we expect for the last few months of this year?
I think we're going to see a longer market time. That's going to be like inevitable. I mean, which is totally normal even in this time of year, every year prior. I think we're going to still see interest rates jump up. I think we're going to see the Fed is talking today. I mean, today is Wednesday, September 21st. earmark that. But as of today, the Fed's talking at 2 o'clock. They're going to talk about potentially doing another 75-point basis or maybe even a 100-point basis. And then they may still even do a couple more after that.
But important to note, that doesn't necessarily tie hand in hand with interest rates going up.
Yeah. It's a financial thing.
It's a conversation that's ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
And our crystal ball is a little foggy.
Yep. And the markets move on a daily basis. So, I mean, it's never strictly tied in, but typically what we see is it does kind of follow that entity.
Sure.
And so, yes, they're going to see a little bit of that increase. I think we're going to... It's interesting. We've been talking about.
Have you noticed one thing that I've really noticed is that I feel like our buyer pool is more tentative right now. Partly because it's on the media.
Yeah.
But it's like before, it's like everybody was rushing to write offers. They were rushing to follow the momentum. Now I feel like they're excited by properties. They like them and they check all the boxes, but they're just a little slower to react. Let's give it some time. I'm okay to lose it. Before people were fearful to lose things, and now they're okay to lose things.
But we've seen these buyers before. It's always interesting.
About a year ago, I think.
Well, yeah, last fall we had that as well, but even prior to the pandemic, I mean, because now that we're normalizing, I don't know how we always categorize in the pandemic. I mean, the president just said we're out of it, so I don't know if we take that as a grain of salt or not, but literally, I mean, prior to this, you see a really good run, and then the buyers who were in it, they make those quick decisions.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see it start to peak or have a little bit of a slowdown, and then those tentative buyers get in last because they were like, oh my God, I was fearful then, and now I'm finally getting that momentum to be like, all right, should I do it? But they're still a little fearful.
Sure,
I mean, there are a lot of headlines that are going out that kind of push into that.
It's part of the reason why we're here today.
But we hopefully educate, we kind of talk through it. I mean, the good thing is we're normalizing.
The other thing that I think I'm kind of thinking that we're going to see a little bit more, right? Because we saw such a slowdown at the end of last year, and then the market got so crazy in the beginning of 2022. Yep. One of the things that I really think that we're going to start to see, which I think it's important for consumers to know, is our pocket listings. Our listings that start to become available, but they're not available to the public. Yeah. So you and I can dive in and find it. And even we've got sellers that are thinking about it, hey, the market got kind of sluggish. This isn't, I can't, this time of year doesn't make sense for me.
It's testing.
But if somebody's willing to do something, you know what, I'm happy to have that conversation. So our pocket listing sites, our off-market inventory, I think it's going to get pretty, not full, that's a relative statement, and as we've already talked, inventory is not going to be huge. No. But I think we're going to definitely see an uptick of that, of homes that you and I can get access to, that the consumers won't be able to see from that perspective. So I think that those that are kind of thinking oh my God, there's no houses on the market, I'm going to wait until next year.
It's under the radar.
It's under the radar.
It's literally under the radar. They're ready to pop, but they're not there yet. I mean, we're still, we also have houses that we're taking photos of this year because it's still beautiful out, and they're not going to list till next year, probably in the winter, which we're just preparing them for the market.
For certain.
Is it a good time to buy or sell?
Based on what?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I mean, again, and yeah.
I'm kidding. But that's the point. Right, wrong, or indifferent, every market that ever exists, we're just talking about Chicago right now, 2022. Mm-hmm. Downtown urban neighborhoods.
The north side.
The north side. The west side comes in there too, and a little itty bitty bit of the south side. From that perspective, there's always somebody that's going to succeed in that market, and there's somebody that could probably fail in that market. So it's really hard to talk to a vast generalization. It's about understanding. You and I know one of the things, most real estate advisors do a large majority of their business in the first half of the year, right? If you actually track people.
A lot.
We as a team really have a successful second half of the year, but that's I think a lot of the strategies that we put forth. For example, we had a lot of clients come to us in January and say, I want to sell my condo and I want to buy a house. Mm-hmm. How do I do this? What's the best way for me to do this? I'm looking at the next year, I don't have a real timeline. Well, for a lot of those people, what we said was, okay, let's be smart about this, right? The market, we're getting nuts out there.
Yeah.
And our thought process is based on your needs, your timeline, and what you're trying to succeed. people that are buying and selling, for example, are very insulated from the market. What's happening on one end of their equation often is happening on the other end of their equation.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one of those things that we're like, okay, you may not sell your condo for an absolute premium, but you're going to buy a more expensive home for less of a premium. So you're actually doing better waiting for the market to normalize a little bit. So we have a lot of clients right now that are just starting to kick back into the market to say, hey, I waited for this time.
Yeah.
This is what makes sense to me. Or clients, first-time buyers that have saying...
The first-time home buyers, I think, are like the big ones right now, because they're not the ones who are like, I'm going to buy low and sell low, or sell low and buy low. They're like, this is my first time getting in. Is it a perfect time for them to purchase at this point?
I think for a lot of them, it really makes sense, right? The market gives them a chance to breathe, to digest, to educate. Now we're in a time where we can kind of go back and doing what we love about it, especially with first-time buyers, of educating, processing, thinking things through from that perspective. So this is a time that a lot of our clients, we maybe even tabled their searches to say, guys, let's take a step back. There's no reason for us to partake in this. Let's take a step back and let's wait for this time. So yes, I think the answer is that it's very specific based on what somebody's trying to accomplish. That's one of the things that we as a team really try and do. I mean, there's a reason we consider ourselves advisors and that we like to have strategy in what we do, is that we really want to hear what our clients are trying to accomplish, and we want to set up a plan that takes the market into place, takes their needs into place, takes their timeline into place, and then put together what we accomplished at the end of the day for certain. So is it a good time to buy or sell? For some people, absolutely.
Talk to us.
For some people, not a chance.
Yeah.
No, it totally depends on what their needs are, and we're happy to talk to people about their individual circumstances off videotape on that call. We appreciate you guys spending some time with it. Hopefully it was worthwhile. Hopefully we had something good to say.
I had a blast hanging out with you.
I liked hanging out with you too. Thanks again
Perfect.
for signing in. We appreciate you.